Imagine spending years building a game only to find that one new scene you added at the last minute left people feeling completely lost. Well, last month that was us. Our little team has been working on the Serpent and the Seed for just over 3 years now. It's a really chilled mobile adventure game featuring some beautiful artwork, some gorgeous music with some very gentle little puzzle mechanics and mini games. We've shared a demo at a bunch of conferences now, including Pocket Gamer Connects in London back in January. And consistently people have told us how much they've enjoyed the game, how much they love the artwork, and the word that comes up more than any other to describe it is how relaxing it is. This April, we've had the chance to exhibit again at WASD, which is part of the London Games Festival. It was a great opportunity to build the final 2 scenes we were hoping to include in Act 1, and a great chance to do some user testing on that new content. And we're so glad that we did, because the results after day 1 were not good. So the game begins in the Garden of Eden. You meet Adam, and the plan is that you're going to help him do a few of the jobs he's been given. Specifically looking after the garden and naming some of the animals. Over the past 3 years I've tried endless prototypes for these 2 tasks and none of them ever felt quite right. The goal is it should all feel like a bit of fun, an opportunity for the player to have a bit of freedom, make some of their own choices, give it a bit of replayability. But it's also really important for setting up the player for later in the game. Naming the animals is an exercise in slowing down, taking a look at something and deciding what you think of it. It's a concept that's echoed in that famous moment where Eve is contemplating the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and maybe 1 or 2 other points in the game too. And planting things and making them grow is a mechanic that's going to come up over and over again throughout the game. The whole theme of the game is kind of about trees through the Bible. So it was important to find a mechanic that was immediately intuitive and fun for the player. But get this scene wrong and it has the potential for the player to get really bogged down, for the game to run out of steam before it's barely begun. And just to feel really overly complex in a game that's otherwise very light on user interface. So we started off by containing it all to a single scene. There are 3 patches of soil where you can plant different things. And in the end, it actually felt pretty straightforward to create a system where you choose what you want to plant, drag the seed into the soil, then pull your finger up the screen to make it grow. Especially once I'd added in some simple sound effects, this felt really nice. Then there are 4 animals. The yak is super obvious since you literally can't get past it until you've named it and it moves out of the way. And the fish is just there in the river swimming about. Then there are 2 that are much harder to find. The hummingbird will only appear if you plant the right kind of flower up here. And the mandrill is hiding in this bush and needs to be enticed out. Oh, and there's this little island down here where I was going to put some meerkats, except that I ran out of time. I made a whole separate devlog about making this part of the game, so I'm not going to go into detail here. But needless to say that my original prototype with massive UI wheels where you could build really complex names is long gone. And in its place we have something super simple, where you just tap a few word choices and we just remember the last 3 you tapped. It's still enough to give you some really fun options, and with the dynamic music options too from Paul Bishop Hooper, it all felt like it was working beautifully. Until we went to WASD. WASD, if you don't know, are the keys on your keyboard most used by gamers. It's also an annual show that's part of the London Games Festival, where lots of indie game developers get to show off their games to the public. The organisers said that over 10,000 people were in attendance. And the event was really cool, such a lovely supportive atmosphere and loads of friendly people on the lookout for fun games to play. It was held at Brick Lane in London, which is quite a fun area near where I used to live. There are all sorts of other amazing games there. I especially enjoyed Paper Trail and Pieced Together. We were there with our little stall. We had these really fun plantable business cards which seemed to really grab people's attention and draw them in, as well as our usual jelly serpents. It was really encouraging to see so many people trying out the Serpent and the Seed, and we had so many lovely comments about our beautiful artwork and the amazing music. People always love exploring Eden, and it's hard to explain just how much fun it is to tap on this little chameleon and watch it change colour, even for grown adults. But we started to notice something. We had a real problem with this new content. The soil patches were working well, people seemed to easily figure out how to grow things, and that was encouraging. But then lots of them were walking along the bottom here to this interesting little island, and then trying to keep walking along here, and what's that? You can't go there? But and then they'd go up here and tap this yak, and then they just sit there staring at these words floating around. Or maybe they'd tap one and then try and confirm that, but why isn't it responding? Oh, I need to pick two. And then they'd keep wandering and go up here, and why is Adam staring so intently in that direction? Is there something I'm meant to do over there? Oh, he says I need to name some more animals. Well, I know, the last time I saw another animal was that elephant 2 screens back. What's going on? In other words, they were utterly lost. How were they to know that the reason Adam was looking right is that he literally always looks to the right when he's idle? I've got all this stuff set up to say that if he's facing left, then it should use the left idle animation instead, and Unity is just completely ignoring it. I just didn't have the time to figure it out. All in all, it wasn't a total disaster. With a little bit of hand-holding, people did find their way through, and they were still very positive about how beautiful the game was, how lovely the music was. But it did take the edge off it a bit, and you just knew that if we hadn't been there to hold their hands, they would have quit a long time before reaching the end. So I went home and I made a ton of changes. I changed the environment around to make it much more obvious that you can't go bottom right. I made the camera zoom in and linger where the mandrel's hiding, to give a stronger hint that there's something for you to do here. But the biggest one was that Adam now gives a running commentary after you name each animal. He'll either say, I think we need to go and name another animal or two. Or he'll say, I think that's enough now, though there may be 1 or 2 out and about if you want to keep looking. Or he'll say, well, I think that's all of them. It all helped to give the thing a lot more momentum, so the player was much clearer on what was expected of them. And it made things go so much smoother on the next 2 days. People had so much fun naming the various animals. We were even privileged enough to have Mark Brown of Game Maker's Toolkit try the game. He had some interesting feedback about some of the interactions in the game. There's lots of fun and silly things you can tap on, not because you need to, but for the sheer enjoyment of it. But Mark commented on how he was sometimes hesitant to play with those things because of how they draw your Robin away from where you want to be going. And I've wrestled with this for months now, because in general I really like the way that those interactions lead the player into certain areas where they otherwise might not go. They're really helpful for teaching the player that there are different routes in the first place. But I've also felt that frustration myself, that when you're down here walking to the right and then you tap the chameleon, it's a bit of a pain that suddenly you're walking all the way around to get here. So I made a compromise. I've added in a safe radius. If the Robin is outside of that zone, then you start walking as before. But if you're within the safe radius, then it just leaves you where you are. It seems to work pretty well, and it's definitely a lot more fun to just experiment with the things in the scene now. All in all, we had so much fun at WASD, and it was really encouraging to see people's response to the Serpent and Seed. In a room full of amazing games, it was still staggering to hear people praising our beautiful artwork. And it was great that the game clearly struck a chord emotionally and resonated with all kinds of people, including people without any particular religious starting point. My favourite quote in our feedback survey was, even though I'm not a religious person, I really liked it. I was afraid it was going to be kind of too religious, but I think the game can be played by anyone. I love the art style and the music too. And that kind of feedback really warms my heart, since that's exactly the kind of player that we're building this game for. Now we've just got to crack on and get the rest of the game made. But you know, the game hasn't always looked this beautiful. Less than 18 months ago it looked like this. So why not watch our 2023 devlog video to find out how one transformational year really changed the Serpent and the Seed.